Welcome in to another episode of the Flyover League. Jamie Plunkett here with Brahms, Stan, Noah Darling. Uh, Welcome to episode 4, folks. We have real official baseball to talk about, results to go over, teams to discuss, players that we liked from the first weekend, and how worried should we be if you're an Arizona or a Texas Tech fan. So we're going to get into all of that on this episode. But first and foremost, we have priorities to discuss here, and that is Noah, you and I were both in Arlington this week for the Shriners Children's College Showdown. Say that 4 times fast. But a great weekend of baseball overall. A lot of really, really good players on the field for both 3 Big 12 teams and the 3 SEC teams that were in Arlington. But I got to ask, man, you got your Brahms fix. We know how much you love Brahms. Did it outweigh your hotel experience that you wrote about over at College Baseball Central?
I went to Brahms twice, so
Okay.
I think that outweighed the one bad experience I had at my hotel without going down the whole however many words I wrote about it on our website, collegebaseballcentral.net. It's a great read. I've read it out loud in retrospect and kind of laughed about it. But the highlight was when on my third attempt of getting access to a room that I did have a reservation at the DoubleTree. And I did notice later that my suitcase had a number on it that was also not a number that I ever got access to. It was like 320. I never went to 320. But either way, I ended up at a room on, it was the third floor, I believe, was the highlight again. This is maybe my third time of trying to get into a room of any kind. I would have slept in the lobby if at that point. It was like 2 a.m. And I opened the door and I'm relieved because my card finally works. Again, there's a lot more to the story, but this is the highlight. I walk in and getting ready to turn the lights on. All of a sudden, I hear a shriek. Hello, hello. Like, hey, happy to see you too, guest of this room. That's certainly not me at this point. It was kind of a scary moment because I don't know what I'm walking in on. You forget that you're not in a hotel room at that point. As far as I know, I was walking in a guy's house mentally. Like, oh my God, please don't. I was an accident. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And I got out of there, and I can only imagine the other guy. I would love to speak to him because I walked in on this guy sleeping at 2 a.m. with his hotel key, essentially. And then another 45 minutes later, I ended up making my way to my own hotel room, which I didn't expect to have access to the next day, but I didn't have any issues outside of what I lined out in my write-up, which again, great read. But what a disaster it was. It took me about 90 minutes to get into my hotel room, and I think they overbooked, but I don't know how that works.
Yeah, you hear about overbooking like on an airline,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't think hotels should be in that practice, frankly. I'm glad you had a
I
room
don't
to
think
stay
anybody
in.
should. I don't think you should overbook at all. That's just
True.
my
This
take
is
on it.
true. Yeah, right. What a world that would be. Um, Glad you got your room situated. Glad you had a bed to sleep in for the weekend because there was a lot of really good baseball going on. You were at the OU team hotel. The Frogs probably could have used you to have another midnight encounter wrong room experience
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
I don't know, Cord Rager or Skip Johnson or someone like that to help them out on Sunday evening. But um, interesting weekend one, Noah, across the board for the Big 12. You had 6 teams go 3-0, another 4 2-1, and then a couple teams 1-2, and then 2-0-3 baseball teams. But overall, a really successful, I think, week one of college baseball for the Big 12.
Yeah, the Big 12 immediately grabbed headlines when Houston won the first game of the season across the whole country in Puerto Rico, and you thought, man, with this momentum, if we win in Arlington a little bit, maybe we win some in Arizona. The Big 12 is going to be in really good shape. It was certainly a roller coaster at certain points, especially with just watching Texas Tech baseball. It feels like it's always a little bit of a roller coaster, and they were certainly up and down, and at more times down in Arlington. But TCU looked really good. Kansas State had a great weekend. I'm sure we'll dive into more of the highlights as we go, but just as we expect, as we kind of talked about last week, whether our producers off in the background cut it out or not, we said that Houston would go undefeated and Arizona would go winless. We were right on that, but with our luck, they probably cut it out when we said that.
It was on the cutting room floor, unfortunately. I went back and listened. That and your bold prediction that Tice Armstrong would hit 3 grand slams in the season
Yeah,
opener also didn't make it into the final episode. Absolutely ridiculous. We need a new producer. Send us your resumes. Um, no, but look, it was Houston was a great storyline throughout the weekend. Obviously, we're recording this on Monday night, and They beat Washington today
Yeah.
in a very hectic baseball game to close out their time in Puerto Rico. I truly believe a an underwatered infield is the reason they won that game because of the cloud of dust that came up when the Washington runner slid into second base. There was no way they could overturn the out call that ended the game. So shout out to the field crew down there in Puerto Rico for helping Houston out a little bit. But the Cougars, I thought we can start with Houston. The Cougars, I thought, really showed kind of what we talked about in the preview episode, where we liked some of the pieces they added in the portal. Dylan Maxey, Antonelli Savateri. We liked some of their arms coming back. Didn't know how the depth would translate and how Richie Roman would look back in the weekend rotation again. But the reality is like you mentioned, they got the opening day win over number 21 Wake Forest, 8-2. Came back the next day and beat another ACC team in Boston College, 5-1. Took care of Manhattan on Sunday, 4-2, and then their 8-7 win over Washington, a Big Ten program, which I don't know where they're going to end up in the Big Ten, but they're 0-4 now, so probably near the bottom. Still, though, come away from that weekend 4-0, feeling pretty good about yourself. You've learned a lot about your ball club. If I'm Todd Whitting, I'm feeling pretty good right now with how the season has opened up.
Yeah, and at times they weren't even full strength. Cade Clemmy didn't go until Sunday, I think was when he made his season debut. Not sure what's going on there. Easton Winfield is a guy that I hope breaks out and adds more to that lineup. That I don't know how much run he got, but I know he didn't play on opening day. So there's potential to get even better for Houston. And you pick up, I think it was 2 Power 5 wins in Washington and Wake Forest. I forget who the third team that they played alongside Manhattan was.
Boston
But
College.
okay, so three Power 5 wins, and that's only going to help the league. It not only helps Houston starting in a 4-0 mark, but also those are wins for the league that, as we discussed, were so important to pick up early on, especially in a place like Puerto Rico where it felt like you didn't really know when these Puerto Rico games were happening, at least because it felt like the times were always getting moved around. But every time a game went final, you heard about it. So that only helps the league. And it's still a long way to go for Houston, as it turns out, sitting at 4-0. But they've certainly turned heads in the league already, I think, just because of the quality of opponents they've beaten. Other teams are undefeated, but I think of the 3-0 teams off the top of my head, outside of maybe Kansas State, they might have the strongest resume through one weekend in our league.
Yeah, I think so. And I was really impressed with Blake Fields, their freshman,
Yeah.
who he got their first kind of scoring inning started on the weekend against Wake Forest, led that inning off with a single, and was really productive throughout the whole weekend. Had a couple more, I believe it was a couple more hits in their win over Boston College. Had a double and a couple RBIs. Uh, just really looked like the moment wasn't too big from him. And that was kind of a theme, I think, throughout the league's opening weekend, was there were freshmen kind of all across the Big 12 that didn't seem overwhelmed by the moment of making their, college baseball debut. Lucas Franco's one for TCU. Brady Janusek at Baylor had really good weekends as well. And so I liked what I saw from Blake Fields, though. He finished the weekend 4 of 11. He scored 3 runs. He had his double, 3 RBIs. He only struck out once. So he took really good pitches, took really good at bats, and then had a pair of stolen bases as well. So a very productive weekend for the freshman down in Puerto Rico, and I think he's going to be a good piece of their infield for the next couple of years. And I'm excited to see him continue to grow this season.
Felt like every time a Houston highlight came across, it was Blake Fields involved, and that's great to see for a freshman. There were so many freshman moments in this league with, you mentioned TCU shortstop as well as Janusek at Baylor. There's a lot of youth that make it exciting. Not just you think about all the talent that we discussed a lot in this league. The freshmen are always a mystery. It was good to see them play right away.
It was. Another team that I'm not going to say we for this. A team that you were very high on coming into the preseason was West Virginia. They traveled to Georgia Southern, pretty dang good baseball team down there in, I believe it's Statesboro, Georgia. The Mountaineers come away with a 3-0 sweep of Georgia Southern. They win on Friday, 15-3, right out of the gate, and then they go doubleheader on Saturday to avoid some weather on Sunday. Take game 1, 11-10. Take game 2 of the doubleheader, 5-2. And in that second game on Saturday, Dawson Montesa, who was a fan favorite of yours, You were all over this guy preseason. Struck out 7 across 6 innings of work in his first outing. Looked incredible. Had total command of his pitches. Earned the win in that game, and looked like a guy who could maybe is going to be a key piece of that weekend rotation moving forward. Loved what we saw from Montesa, and then Ohio State transfer Matthew Graveline as well. A couple home runs on Saturday. Uh, really showed up in the corner outfield as well defensively. Two great additions for Steve Sabins, and they both stepped up right away. It was good to see because we were worried a little bit about the D2 translation for Montesa, and it looked like he was unfazed completely.
The entire weekend rotation was kind of a surprise for West Virginia. Late last week, or I think it might have been the day we spoke, so I guess not late at all. Monday last week, Steve Sabins came out and said what the rotation was going to look like, and it wasn't exactly what we penciled in, but Montesa was the guy that I don't know if I'm going to take credit for getting you on board, but there was certainly buzz everywhere about him, and it was great to see them go 3-0. I still think that there are questions to be answered on the mound that you knew were going to have to be answered, but at the same time, they went 3-0, so you're not going to lose sleep. They did lose Brody Kresser to a brief injury on Saturday. I've been told that he's going to be just fine. I don't know if that means day to day or what that looks like, but crisis averted there because he's not just a everyday first baseman or everyday shortstop. He does a little bit of both. So that'd be kind of like losing Cher at 2 positions as opposed to 1, but he's just fine. I like this West Virginia team, and like we said, they can afford to get a little experimental early on just because of the not so strength of schedule that they have. They have Liberty and Canisius coming up, and then Kennesaw State, Radford, Columbia, who's actually not a bad program. And then they kind of roll in and step it up with a Big Ten midweek and then Big 12 conference play. But there's not a lot of test on these arms and the bats if we're going to get experimental with the lineup. So you can get creative and still find ways to go 3-0. And I speculate that that's kind of what happened in the bullpen just a little bit when you win a game 11-10. But you start off so hot with Montesa didn't pitch that game, but Montesa pitched well, and then you see the Georgia Southern offense kind of wake up a little bit. So I just think it's a little plug and play right now, but I'm still very, very in on them as you should be at 3-0. There was some West Virginia fan that tweeted in roughly the 4th inning on Saturday, I believe, that said, "Hey, we can't win them all. Still have faith in this team being able to go far. Losing happens," and they ended up winning the game. So it was just that kind of weekend for West Virginia a little bit. Jamie, I don't know if it's just me, but I cannot hear you. It might be a me thing.
No, it's me. I muted. I heard a dog
Okay.
barking in my
All right,
home,
great.
and so I decided to hit that. So no, but what I was saying is, even in that 11-10 win, they got out to a 10-4 lead, right? Graveline hit a big 3-run home run in the 4th, and then in the 4th inning, on the bottom half of that 4th inning, Georgia Southern scored 6 runs, and so there was a little bit of a big inning there. Or I guess between the 4th through the 7th, they scored 6 runs. Now that I'm looking at this recap with my eyes and not just glancing at it, so a little bit of a breakdown in the middle innings there, but you got back on track with a Gavin Kelly run in the 8th, and then closed it out. I believe Estridge pitched in this game. Let me double check that. Yeah, Ben Estridge won in the 3rd to kind of close things out with a couple of strikeouts. And so when you've got talent on the back end of the rotation or back end of the bullpen, like West Virginia does, you can win some of these shootouts and then really kind of lock it down when you need to. And it looks like that's what they did on Saturday. So a lot of versatility in this lineup, a lot of versatility with the pitching staff, even with some of the injuries that they're dealing with right now. West Virginia is one to watch. I think they could, like you said, take full advantage of this schedule kind of early on here.
And they finally appeared in the top 25, according to our buddies at D1 Baseball, which was a struggle last year.
Right at 25.
Yeah. So
just
drop one game and you're out.
Probably. Well, look, I mean, or you could drop one game like TCU and move up 3 spots from 10 to 7.
There you go.
So it's whatever they're feeling on any given day. Honestly, though, I mean, you look around at all the other, you look at all these top 25 rankings, and there's really no consistency. There's no methodology. There's no algorithm for figuring all of this stuff out. And so it has been fun to see the movement today across the top 25. I saw TCU as high as 6. I saw them as low as 11. I saw West Virginia in half of them. In the other half, there were no other Big 12 teams involved. It'll be interesting to kind of track that over the next month or so, especially with a team like Baylor. Newcomer of the week in the Big 12, Tice Anderson, 3 grand slams in his debut. Noah, I don't know if you know this, but I learned from ESPN that if you hit that Tice Armstrong not only had 3 grand slams, but he also had 12 RBIs. And to me, I think that was equally impressive a feat as the
Yeah,
three grand
yeah,
slams themselves.
because those are not guaranteed. The RBIs on those situations,
Right.
and I'm told he also got on base 3 times in those
Interesting.
ABs, which he also had 3 of to get those. Um, what an outing! Just to go up there and do all those things collectively at the same time. That's so rare, but especially the Grand Slam aspect of things. Uh, Obviously, like you said, we were right on that last week when we were discussing big impact Baylor transfers from UT Arlington, and he made an immediate splash. The thing is that he did that, and it caught so much national attention, and then of course, a lot of players would call that a great season, as many have said.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of stopped after that weekend. He didn't do anything after. He didn't record any hits. I don't believe. I know he got another RBI via hit by pitch. So there's going to be a player that I'm sure we'll talk about shortly that kind of stole some accolades from him, because you see that and you think, oh, 3 grand slams. Well, there's your Big 12 Player of the Week. They played on Saturday and Sunday too. And no, of course, no disrespect to Tice Armstrong. What a moment for him, and I'm sure there'll be more to come because that's a very repeatable performance. Happens all the time. So, but yeah, what a job by Baylor, and starting off 3-0 is exactly what you wanted for this team because the schedule is going to get tough. You can't really afford to go 2-1 right now. It was nice to go 3-0. I'm hoping that they can continue this trend of winning, even against an inferior opponent, against some of the great opponents they play heading into, I believe, as soon as this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to get into this weekend's schedule here in a little bit, and Baylor's level of competition does step up. Obviously, the 3-0 sweep of New Mexico State is exactly how you want to start. They scored 27 total runs over the 3 games. They only allowed 7, so really nice work by the pitching staff as well to kind of execute on that side of the game. And it was really interesting because, like you mentioned, not only did Tice Armstrong's day take away from D. Kennedy's weekend, which was a great one for Kansas
Yeah.
State. But it also took away a little bit from Brady Janusek, who we've mentioned already on the show. He hit his first career home run on Saturday to help Baylor win 5-2. Ethan Calder and Caleb Bunch were great on the mound for Baylor in that game as well. They combined for 7 innings of 2-hit baseball, and they combined for 8 strikeouts as well. Really good job executing pitches by both of those guys. Then Janusek stole a pair of bases and scored a couple runs on Sunday in the sweep clinching win, 7-3. Travis Sanders also notched 4 hits in that game. You mentioned him in our preseason episode as being kind of the guy this roster is built around, making that move to shortstop this year. And so there were several people outside of Tice Armstrong who really contributed to Baylor's success over the weekend. And you know, it's going to have to be that way going forward, right? There's not going to be another famous last words. There's not going to be another 3 grand slam game in college baseball this year, and so it's going to take Sanders and Janusek and Armstrong being more consistent than 3 home runs one day and no hits the next 2 for the Bears to do what they want to do this year.
And on the mound, Mason Green only pitched 1.1 innings in relief on, I believe it was opening day. That's a guy that heading into the year, there was a lot of talk about him continuing to be a starter as he was last year and potentially being a Friday night guy. I've been told that they're kind of stretching him out. It's not a concern long term, so I would anticipate him being in the starting rotation mix maybe as soon as this weekend against those teams like Oregon State, Southern Miss, Purdue that they have on their schedule in the short term, and then longer term it only gets tougher, like we mentioned, and apparently we'll mention again. But it's kind of like I forget who it was earlier that was Houston, who was missing just a few pieces. That it feels like they're only going to get stronger, and you hope that they can do it because again, it's not going to be easy moving forward.
Yeah. It looked very easy for D. Kennedy this weekend out in
Yes.
Arizona. My goodness, Kansas State sweeps the weekend. In which tournament were they in? Were they in the MLB Desert Invitational? Was that them?
Yes,
Right.
yes, they were. Yeah,
MLB Desert Invitational. They beat they beat Iowa 15-6 to open their season like a drum. They beat a very talented UConn team on Saturday 7-3, and then I don't know what Penn State did to offend them, but I know Pete Hughes got ejected pretty early in this game by Angel Campos. Same Same umpire who had all of the controversy in the College World Series back in June. Ejects Pete Hughes early in this game, and then the Wildcats go on to have a 14-run seventh inning to run rule Penn State 24-5. D. Kennedy, I don't have the Big 12 press release pulled up, but D. Kennedy hit 2 home runs in their win over Penn State. He also had a grand slam in their win over Iowa. A couple of doubles along the way as well. Uh, just an absolute burner that he has started the season on, and that's great to see for Kansas State because I mean he's such a huge piece of that offense. Um, but I don't think I don't remember in past years this level of power from D Kennedy. Kind of a gap to gap guy, but not a home run guy like this. So if he's added that to his arsenal, if he's bulked up a little bit, um, I mean I might have to change kind of my expectations for Kansas State and for D Kennedy a little bit.
Yeah, I know when I was preparing for them, I hope I said it. I'm pretty sure I did. Where I just there, it felt like they had no holes for this Wildcat lineup, and then combine it with the quality pitching that they have, and they have Lincoln Sheffield going on Sunday. I
Yeah,
thought for sure he was a Friday guy. Don't know what that's all about. Obviously, it worked out when you escaped the 4-day weekend with a perfect record. But D Kennedy just absolutely on fire. 538 on the weekend, 7 base hits, 3 home runs, and it was 2 grand slams. So you got one, but he hit another one just to undercut Tice Armstrong even more. Uh, 13 RBI, which is again the same number that Tice had, which might have been the kicker to give him that nod for Big 12 Player of the Week. D. Kennedy was always so fun to watch defensively. He also stole 4 bags this weekend, which you can do the math on what that's on pace for. I won't, but something like 200, right? Which
yep.
will certainly hold up. But yeah, really fun player to watch, and it feels like he's a catalyst for what they do, whether he's playing third or shortstop or whatever that looks like. Appears they're moving him around a little bit, but the rest of the lineup hit around him. I know AJ Vasco had a big day, either today or yesterday, and they're bringing in these younger guys, and it feels like they're finding flexibility in that lineup like so many others in this league are.
Yeah, and flexibility with our pitching staff too. You know, that you go to the Saturday win over UConn, and it was a really bumpy start for Dante Lewis. He gave up 3 runs in 2 innings, walked 4 guys, and then to have a guy like Carson Liggett who is appears healthy, because he comes into that game, gives you 5 strong innings of relief, only allows 2 hits, strikes out 5, and then the TCU transfer Cohen Feaser comes in for the last 2 innings, strikes out 3 as well, and earns the win there. Um, you know, I don't know. You mentioned Sheffield being the Sunday guy this weekend. I'm curious to see if Pete Hughes sticks with the same rotation going forward, or if he experiments a little bit. So, I mean, if you've got a guy like Liggett waiting in the wings who gave you 5 innings already, maybe Dante Lewis is, uh, better suited for a relief role. You can maybe stick him somewhere in the outfield occasionally. Do the two-way player thing with Dante Lewis, like we saw last year from him, and he was perfectly successful as a freshman in that role. But it looks like Kansas State has options, and that's never a bad thing at this point in the season for a head coach to be able to kind of play around a little bit.
And with this being a 4-day weekend, I wonder how much that had to do with Dante Lewis getting the start where he did, and Lincoln
That's
Sheffield
true.
throwing on Sunday, and just the idiosyncrasies of a schedule that you probably won't have to see the rest of the season. The start that intrigued me the most was James Guyette moving up to the rotation altogether, but then also starting on Friday. That's a lot of faith in a guy that just off the top, I think this was his first career start. Really good reliever last season, but he was pretty good on Friday against Iowa, and that's an Iowa offense that I think is really underrated. They're the Hawkeyes are a team that return everybody offensively, but nobody on the mound. So you thought that they'd be susceptible to a 24-5 drubbing like Kansas State put on Penn State, but either way, I think that these are all quality wins for K State and Arizona that will age better than they might look right now. Penn State's a good program. Iowa's a pretty good program. Who knows what Air Force is, but they are the troops. So that's an athletic bunch no matter what, I hope. Otherwise, I'm still in on Pete Hughes, and I'm actually even more in now, but I don't want it to appear that I'm just now joining because it was cool a week ago too.
It was cool a week ago. Shout out to Air Force. two Fort Worth local kids from my neck of the woods are on that team and contributing in a big way. Um, you have Brooks Burdine, a true freshman who has won the right fielder uh, job there. He is the son of former TCU safety Landry Burdine, who was on the TCU team in 1998 that beat USC in the Sun Bowl. Very fun story. Love that family to death. And then you also have, excuse me, Estridge, Gaines Estridge, who is the Friday night starter this year for Air Force. He's a sophomore, the son of football and basketball play-by-play voice Brian Estridge. So some fun TCU connections to that Air Force team. It's been really cool to see them get off to the start that they've gotten off to this year at 2-2 now, with a nice little win over Iowa there to open up their season. But Kansas State does take them down today, 11-8. To move to 4-0 on the season. So that's 2 4-0 Big 12 teams now, I believe. Houston and Kansas State, just like we all predicted. Tanner Duke got this start today, struggled. Robert Fortenberry in relief, and then Austin Haley gave an inning and a third in relief. So the two-way player has gotten a couple at bats, has an RBI, and now a couple innings on the mound for Kansas State. Another interesting guy to watch for the Wildcats this year. Let's see. Where do you want to go next? Do we want to round out the weekly awards here with Noah Franco and TCU?
Yeah, I think that'd be a natural point. You took us on the TCU time capsule. You might as well get us.
Let's just go ahead and wrap that segment up. How about Noah Franco earns pitcher of the week for the Big 12? Not. If you had given me 15 picks, I don't think I would have picked Noah Franco to win this award in week 1, just because of what we learned about his role coming out of camp this offseason. But he goes 3 innings in relief, no hits, 4 strikeouts against Arkansas on Saturday night, protects a 1-run lead from the 7th on to get the 3-inning save, and the Frogs get the win over Arkansas to get their second ranked win in as many days. He was dominant, right? We were both there watching it in person. The fastball was up to 98. He was locating it with ease. His slider was as good as I've ever seen his slider, frankly. He was emotional like a closer should be. He was talking his talk like a closer should. He stopped after the final strikeout, which was a drop third strike. And as his catcher's actively throwing the ball to first base, which we had seen a catcher mess up already on the weekend, he is he is cupping his ear to the Arkansas heavy crowd in Globe Life Field, asking them to continue talking to him. Very fortunate for him that Brady Dallimore did not send that baseball into right field, or it might have been a devastating turn of events for Noah Franco. But he gets the save. And it's a 2-1 weekend for TCU out of Globe Life with a win over Vanderbilt, and then the run rule lost to Oklahoma on Sunday night, 12-2. But overall, I think a pretty productive and good weekend for the Horned Frogs against, probably some of the best competition Big 12 teams faced in week 1.
Yeah. It feels really good to just go in there and beat Arkansas when it's a heavy Arkansas crowd. I think it was 22,300 and some in attendance, and that was just a slight Arkansas lean, to put it mildly. I know in my pregame thing that I kind of put out, I just said that it was going to be a moderately split crowd, and that actually upset Arkansas fans. But just Google moderately and everything, or relatively split crowd, and it turns out everything is relative. But back-to-back 5-4 wins, and then it felt kind of soured out by that run rule against Oklahoma. But I'm not going to let that weigh on me too much. Oklahoma is just playing really, really good baseball right now. I didn't realize how strong their pitching was, especially on Friday and Saturday. And then I want to see Baumler develop, because I had him as the Sunday guy before it was going to be Lance Davis. And I thought higher of his performance than what he set out on Sunday. But I'll chalk that up to Sunday scaries a little bit. We all get those, especially in college baseball. But I'm not going to and let that take away beating 2 top 25 teams in Vanderbilt and Arkansas that I think are both going to be pretty good. Vanderbilt's Connor Fennell is one of the best pitchers in the country, and TCU had some issues, but not a ton of issues, breaking out their offense. Sawyer Stroh-Snyder with the immediate home run. And then the freshman, Lucas Franco, had minimal issues getting used to college baseball with his home run and a triple. And then just post game watching him speak, you can tell that he is primed to not give up that job. It just feels like he is made for college baseball. You never know how old these kids are. Is he? You may not even know. Is he going to be draft eligible next year, or is he a 3-year guy for sure?
Oh, that is a good question. I think he is a draft eligible sophomore. I will have to double check that info though. So he's a little bit older, but yeah, the swagger that he had
Yeah.
in post game was almost funny, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
see any baseball player. Well, that's not true. You I'd be hard pressed to find a more confident kid in the dugout for TCU just verbally than Lucas Franco. I mean, you mentioned the home run and the triple. His first college at bat was a very loud out.
Yeah. Yeah.
107 off the bat, probably about 404 feet right in front of the wall in right center, at the deepest part of Globe Life's outfield. And he told us afterwards, what did he say? He was rounding second base and he looked at Fennel and said, "Yeah, you got lucky."
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, man, your first college at bat, you're already trash talking a Friday starter. Like, I mean, I love the confidence. And I'll be completely honest with you, man. Swagger is something that TCU's team has lacked a little bit over the last couple of years. And so you have guys like Noah Franco and Lucas Franco, who are not related, providing that in the lineup and on the mound. Very cool to see. Reminds me a lot of the 23 ball club. Reminds me a lot of the ball clubs from 14 to 17 that went to Omaha 4 years in a row. Just this confidence and the willingness to just talk about being confident is something that TCU baseball has needed to get back to. And it's cool to see that energy coming from an 18-year-old freshman.
And then on the mound, you get similar energy almost from Tommy Lepore. Just even post game, he hadn't pitched for several innings, and he was kind of the third guy in line to talk to us. And the guy is like coming down off of something, and it's, oh my god, you got to take a deep breath. But he's just so fun to watch. And if this whole TCU team can stay together, and if Lucas can not give up that role, as I think we'd all be shocked if he did, he just adds so much. And I'm excited to see what this TCU team looks like as they progress through this tough schedule that they have in their own right, which is very much by design because they know what they have. They know that what this year can be, and I'm excited to watch it. Especially, we got to stop meeting like this weekend in Hollywood.
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you though. They've got to figure out Sundays because to get where they want to go from an RPI perspective, they're going to have to close out series with sweeps when it comes to league play. And Lance Davis, Trevor Baumler, both a little flat. Maybe it was nerves, like you said. Lance Davis, redshirt freshman, transferred from Arkansas, his first collegiate start, right? Trevor Baumler struggled last year, had a great summer in the Cape. Didn't have the best fall camp, honestly, and we saw more of the same, I think, from him on Sunday afternoon. So I'll be curious to see what happens with that Sunday starter role. You know, they've got a guy going on Tuesday in Nolan Johnson, who was the Summit League Pitcher of the Year last year for North Dakota State. So maybe he's an option if he has a good outing against UTA. Uli Fernsler's a freshman I've mentioned on the show a couple times already. When he gets fully healthy, he might be an option as well. But they're going to need to solidify the rotation if they really want to get where they want to go. But hey, it's better to take this loss to Oklahoma in weekend one than in a regional, right? So they cleared that hurdle. They know that they've got stuff to work on. It's a great teaching tool for the coaching staff. I think they'll be just fine. The two other Big 12 teams that were in Arlington also have a lot of teach tape for their respective programs. We can start with Oklahoma State, who went 1-2 on the weekend, lost in pretty big fashion to Arkansas and Oklahoma on Friday and Saturday before bouncing back with a run rule win over Vandy, which I don't think many people saw coming after the first 2 days that Oklahoma State had. But Josh Holliday talked after the game about kind of the persistence of his team and the focus that they had coming into Sunday to kind of end on a good note. And Oklahoma State looked like the more prepared and more energized team against the Doors, and they come away with a big win.
I don't know what it was, but I think it was overdue for Oklahoma State. Just the way that they played in the first 2 games, it felt like they were playing below their talent level, especially the way they ended last season with so much momentum. I was impressed with the pitching staff from Oklahoma State on Sunday, not so much the other days. I think Noah Weck, one of many Noahs in Arlington this weekend, I think he is eventually going to knock on the door of that starting rotation just based on the energy I saw from him. But Colin Ritchie was tremendous on Sunday. I think he had, it's hard to know because the last RBI was to walk it off. So you kind of get confused with the math. I think it was 5 or 6 RBIs in that Sunday game. And what he means to that lineup is can't be understated because you lose a guy, Nolan Schubart, somebody has to replace him. That's easier said than done. But that big bat veteran presence is important for a team that has a lot of youth waiting in the wings. And as Coach Holiday alluded to, sounds like maybe a unknown injury to Avery Ortiz. What does that look? How does that impact the lineup in the infield for Oklahoma State? And then as I continue to harp on so many freshmen that I want to see get opportunities, how do you work them in? We saw a couple freshmen play on Sunday, not necessarily the names that you look at and say, yeah, these were the highly touted ones, but there were a couple out there, and I'm interested to see how that develops. But I think the most interesting quote from Josh Holiday, not so much learning about the team, but I liked when he said that winning on Sunday makes the food taste a little bit better and doesn't ruin the weekend. Maybe he'll smile between now and I think Thursday is what he said. So I think Oklahoma State's fine with 1 and 2. You're not pressing the alarm bells just yet, but the performances on Friday and Saturday weren't exactly optimistic, but then they just really turned it on Sunday. And I don't know if that's a Vanderbilt problem or an Oklahoma State advantage. I'm going to look at it from the Oklahoma State perspective.
Yeah, I think looking at it from that perspective is fine, and there would be more concern for me with Oklahoma State if they had gone to like a Fresno State and lost 2 or 3, or a UTSA and lost 2 or 3, or a DBU or something like that. Um, but we'll see. I mean, the injuries are maybe going to be an issue again in 2026, which is something I know they were hoping to get away from last season. If Ortiz is down for any extended period of time, that is a real disappointment. Although I thought Terrence Bowen held his own at second base, looked fine defensively, didn't have the greatest at bats in the world, but was kind of thrown into the fire there on Sunday. So we'll give him some grace. But like you said, I think they've got some really youthful talent on this roster. It's just a matter of how they utilize it going forward if Ortiz is not able to keep going. And also in Oklahoma State's defense, they ran into LJ Mercurius on Saturday, who just all of us, like you mentioned earlier, Oklahoma's pitching rotation was the best in Arlington, hands down. Mercurius was phenomenal. I think he struck out 12 in 7 innings of work. Sometimes you just run into a guy, and you just got to tip your cap and move on, frankly. So that was kind of the way Saturday went for Oklahoma State there. But I liked the way Hudson Barrett battled on Friday. Like Garrett Shull swung the bat pretty well at times this weekend to join Ritchie in that regard. I mean, the pieces are there. They just got to stop getting hurt. Really, is kind of my opinion on the thing.
Yeah, easier said than done at times, apparently
True.
in Stillwater. But the silver lining of injuries is that it opens up the door for other guys to earn playing time. You don't know what the perils of that might look like, but the upside is that you become stronger over time. If a guy has to miss 2 weeks, well, somebody else gets 2 weeks of playing time. I'm intrigued by that concept for a team that has so much talented freshmen waiting, or so many, I should say, waiting in the wings, like we keep circling around. But it doesn't sound like Josh Holiday's eager to experiment with that. So we may have to lower expectations on that, but I'm not. I refuse to do that.
That's fine. That's your prerogative, and honestly, I'm proud of you for standing your ground.
Of course.
To the third team, let's put a pin in Texas Tech for now because we've got a worryometer segment that I wanted to get to in a little bit here. So let's move on to a team you're wildly familiar with, and we were in different places on this weekend series. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a cruise control situation. I underestimated UTRGV. That's my bad. I live in the state of Texas. I should know better. Thank God Armani Ragosa does not listen to this show, or he might drive up here and fight me. But the Kansas Jayhawks take 2 of 3 from UT Rio Grande Valley. A fantastic series against the Vaqueros. It had a ton of wildly entertaining moments throughout the weekend. Kansas loses the first game 7-4, and then bounces back the next 2 days to win 10-3 and 8-7. That 8-7 game went down to the very last strike as UTRGV loaded the bases on Sunday. Caleb Deere, I believe, walked the bases loaded and also struck out the side in the ninth inning
That sounds right.
to close out that rubber match with a win. Um, but I mean, what a test, right? You couldn't really ask for more out of the gate if you're Kansas, just getting some of these news guys up to speed. One of whom you were high on in the preseason and delivered throughout the weekend. Jordan Bach had himself a great weekend for the Jayhawks.
Yeah. What I kind of kept saying every time I mentioned Jordan Bach to anybody, not just you, was the first time I saw him, he hit a leadoff home run against Bradley, and he opened up the college baseball season with a leadoff home run for the Jayhawks. So that was very vindicating when I saw that tweet notification came through, and I watched that a whole bunch. He and Cade Baldridge, who has experience at second base and also in center field, so more versatility for that infield and outfield, was also big throughout the weekend. And then every time Kansas needed something from Brady Ballinger, he delivered it as well, which is exactly how we started last season. So those three guys give me a lot of confidence offensively. It was a little bit slower going for some of the other guys in the lineup, and then the bullpen feels like a total mixed bag to me right now, just from afar. I haven't dove in too much into watching every pitch or anything along those lines, but it feels like they're looking for a guy to rely on and throwing a lot of guys in doing so. I know there's a lot of potential with a guy like Bodie Ray, and Caleb Deere looked really good in relief at times. Like you said, he walked the bases loaded. I'm pretty sure that's accurate. Now that I remember right, he did give up a bloop single to Brady Ballinger where he kind of looked like a first baseman in left field. And then at other times he was able to kind of be like Alex Breckheimer last year, where he's a giant, I think 6'7", pardon the local youth lingo, as well as I think like 270 without adding too many pounds to him. Just a massive closer, which appears to be the MO for Dan Fitzgerald and that pitching staff, coached by Brandon Scott. But overall, I think they're willing to toy around with them, but you also have to realize that you're playing the top three teams in the Southland the next week or so. They have Lamar in a midweek this week, and then they have McNeese State. I'm sure that's by design. Those are all going to be big RPI opportunities, but you also have to win those games. And we're very, very close to going 1-2. This is very similar to how the Arizona State series went last year for the Jayhawks, and you were lucky to get out of it this time. But again, a bloop single falls, and we're talking about the 1-2 Jayhawks and not the 2-1 Jayhawks.
We are, and you mentioned pitching. Mathis Nayrol had the best start on the weekend. He was wildly efficient. I think he needed 77 pitches to get through 7 innings of work, which was a blessing after Friday. Because tell me what you thought about Dom Vogel's start, because he struck out 8, but he also walked 4. He gave up 5 runs. He walked in one of those runs, and he had such an impressive freshman year. I mean, his freshman year, his first start was against TCU up in Lawrence, and I think he struck out 11 or 12 in 8 innings of work against a very good TCU roster, and kind of just lit the world on fire for the rest of his freshman season. Regressed a little bit last year. The command wasn't quite there, and more command issues to start this season. I'm just curious what your impression of his start was, because I think that for Kansas to do what it wants to do this year, they really need him to be more back to his freshman form than the 2025 version.
I'm cautiously optimistic about this being a sort of a fluke outing. The Kansas recognized, of course, because you and I did. So of course the coaching staff recognized that he was very up and down last season. It felt like he would have a great outing, and then the very next weekend he would not have a great outing by definition, and it burnt them in the postseason. Creighton hit him around at Baum-Walker, and you watched him as a freshman, and of course you expect a player to get even better as they go, and he was the Big 12 freshman of the year. And then he enters with all this accolade talk around him, and I don't want to make any assumptions, but I wonder if that kind of spooks somebody in that position where you just say, I'm at Kansas. I wasn't highly recruited. I think they snatched him from Southern Illinois, where they were closing in on getting him. So it wasn't like he chose Kansas and it just felt like home over Blue Bloods. It was a situation where he slid in kind of under the radar, and then all of a sudden it's, oh wow, you're so great. Now you're going to lead us to great things. But again, I don't want to make that assumption, but I am optimistic that their plan of this offseason, he did not pitch at all. So I wonder if outside of fall ball, this is just him getting back in the routine. It was obviously a rough outing. When I tuned in, he was walking guys left and right. I think he had loaded the bases with 2 outs himself just by walking guys. So I don't know what that kind of situation looks like, but at the same time, I'm optimistic that he's going to be able to turn it around just because um, they're relying on him, and the reality is that you're a junior with All American honors next to your name, and that's who you're supposed to be for a Big 12 club. And I think that'll snap at some point. But the last year and start are very up and down for Dom.
Yeah. And like you mentioned, a lot of bullpen arms got some run over the weekend. So that in that way, that's kind of a good information gathering experience for the coaching staff. 6 arms in that win on Sunday to close out the series, which I think was, like you said, very close to being 1-2, but it's not. Right, close
Yeah,
only
yeah.
counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Here in baseball, you got to actually score the runs in order to win, and UTRGV came up short in that regard on Sunday. Let's see, where are we going to go next? Where are we going to go next? Anybody calling to you that you want to talk about next?
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I've forgotten every Big
Got
12 team all of a sudden.
We've got Arizona State. We've got
Yep.
Cincinnati. We could go to let's see, BYU, Utah. We've got Arizona and Texas Tech still to talk about.
Well, let's go out to Tempe for ASU.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Arizona State takes 3 games against Omaha. Your beloved. I don't even know the Omaha mascot. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very sorry.
The Mavericks. The
The
Mavericks.
Mavericks. Oh, UTA and Omaha have that in common. Very nice. 7-2, 11-5, and then a harrowing 6-4 win on Sunday. They found themselves down 4-0 early. Easton Barrett really struggled in his start. But this was a good weekend for Arizona State. They learned a lot about some of these newcomers. I know you're a big Dean Toigo guy, so I'm going to let you take the lead on him. I want to talk though about Matthew Polk for just a second. A kid that started at Vandy, spent 23 and 24 as an everyday starter with Vanderbilt, I believe, and then got banged up a little bit. Decided to take a year away from baseball. Was not even on Vanderbilt's team in 2025. Stayed at Vandy to finish his degree, and then transferred as a graduate to Arizona State this year. In his first at bat in over 2 years, launched a home run on Saturday to get the scoring started for Arizona State. Really cool story. And it was the first of 4 home runs. It's like he kind of started the parade there. New Contradas, Dean Toigo, and Dominic Smaldino all hit home runs that day to clinch the series win. Cool story, great moment. Happy for him, and looks like he's kind of right back at it, contributing to a winning ball club, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, it's the thing was the transfer. They have so many of these transfers that you didn't know exactly what they're going to look like, but you always, when you discuss transfers, they're only going to get better and they're going to do exactly what they did last year, but maybe add some more. They're never going to get worse in the world of the transfer portal. It was nice to see him because, like you said, he didn't play last season, so I had seen the name Matthew Polk, and I go, Vanderbilt Matthew Polk, and I go, no way, that he played in college 10 years ago, and there he was. So it was cool to see him get that opportunity. You mentioned Dean Toigo, the UNLV guy, 250 on the weekend, not tremendous, but he hit 2 home runs, which is exactly what he did last season. I forget how many it was. It was at least 15 to 20 for UNLV a year ago. So much raw power. It felt like right when they needed it, he was leaving the yard. It wasn't just your casual, we're up 8 home run. It was well timed as well with his 2 RBIs. So there you go, 2 solo shots, but still what he adds to that lineup is exciting because you cannot pitch to him. And there are so many guys that racked up very high averages this weekend. I think it was 6 guys that hit above 300 for the Sun Devils, which is exactly what they need as this pitching staff kind of develops underneath them. You mentioned Easton Barrett got hit around a little bit, but Cole Carlin was kind of exactly what you want from a Friday night guy. The strikeouts weren't overbearing with just 3, but it was nice to see him make that transition as well, at least so far. Omaha, not a overbearing opponent by any stretch, but that's one of the better teams in the Summit League, if that's something you want to hang your hat on. But the offense is fun to watch, and I'm looking forward to that continuing to be the case.
Yeah, Carlin was really good. I don't really care about strikeout numbers for starters, to be honest with you. I think swings and misses are more important late in games than early. for me, the thing that stood out about Carlin's outing was that he only threw 67 pitches in 5 innings of work, right? Like as he continues to stretch out, if he's that efficient over the course of the season, we could see him throwing into the 7th and 8th inning pretty often. And that's going to be absolutely huge for the Sun Devils. So I had questions about him moving from the back end of the rotation or back end of the bullpen to the rotation this offseason. He told me to shut the hell up with his first appearance of the season. And that Sunday game being closed, they had the benefit of rolling their new closer out there, and Derek Schaefer got the first opportunity to do that. Clean ninth, really simple. Didn't strike anybody out, but just I think he only needed like 11 pitches or something to get through the ninth inning. So really good effort from him on that regard. And I think we're starting to see the very beginning of the pieces falling into place for Bloomquist in this ball club, and they clearly have the power again, like they did last year. And if the pitching can catch up, like you mentioned, I think they're going to be just fine.
Their schedule does pick up a little bit. They do have UConn in the midweek, as I'm sure we'll touch on, but then a little bit later on there in Arlington for week 3, and you'll get a fair share of Oklahoma in the midweek leading up to that, and then you'll get Mississippi State, Tennessee, and A&M. So we're going to learn a lot about this ASU team and how that offense really gels and how the pitching surrounds it, for better or worse, in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Moving on. Let's go. Let's see. Want to make our trip up to Utah and do BYU in Utah?
Absolutely.
Let's do that. BYU, tough weekend. Let me double check. I believe they were winning today when I looked last. Let me double check. They did beat Western Kentucky today 12-8, which brings them to 2-2 on the season. They won the season opener 3-2, lost the second game of their Friday doubleheader, and then lost again on Saturday. Obviously, BYU doesn't play on Sunday, so they finished that series up on Monday afternoon. We talked a lot about kind of the marginal improvement that we hope to see from BYU coming into 2026. Just how could they, get a little bit more support from their pitching, maybe a little bit more consistency from the lineup, and we didn't really see a ton of that in either direction this weekend. Granted, Monday was the most runs they allowed in a game, 8 on 7 hits. So, there were some walks involved there. Maybe not the best command from, the back end of the rotation, but I thought the lineup would score more runs against Western Kentucky, and they really didn't until Monday. So I'm curious to see if they can find a little bit more consistency as they get into their schedule a little bit, because it's not the toughest non-conference schedule in the world. They have time similar to West Virginia, but maybe at a different level, kind of work out some of the kinks a little bit. I thought Ashton Johnson was great on Friday, 6 innings in relief, dominant outing from him. But other than that, I really just didn't see anything that kind of popped for me from BYU this weekend.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Ashton Johnson was what stole the show for me, just because of what he did against Arizona State in the Big 12 tournament and his outing before 2026. And he appears to have solidified himself in that role of being able to carry BYU to a win, if that's where they keep him in. I don't know if that's the smartest thing to do, but I appreciate his efforts of being just kind of a workhorse. Stood out to me was just the struggle of Ryder Robinson in support of this lineup. He was so strong last year. Only 1 hit so far this season. A couple guys over 300, but outside of that, like you alluded to, just not a lot of juice in this lineup right now. And you didn't necessarily need it, apparently, if you're going to go 3-1. But at the same time, it feels like that was their secret to winning in the Big 12. And if that's not going to click, of course, it's only weekend 1, but if that's not going to carry you to wins, it's going to get scary when Ashton Johnson can't go 6 innings in relief for you. And I thought better or higher of the starting pitching, and again, they weren't overly dominant as well, with just Garrison Sumner and really just him. But outside of that, I'm excited to see how things change, because I know they have some freshmen waiting in the wings as well, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a wait and see situation with BYU right now. Sumner is a guy who I had have big expectations for this year. Peyton Gubler's another pitcher of theirs that I think really needs to take a step in the right direction for them. Um, but we'll see. We'll see. Their brethren right up the road, Utah, had a pretty good weekend against Fresno State. Their game on Monday was actually rained out and will not be made up. So they did play in a roundabout way a regular 3-game series on the weekend, taking the first two from Fresno State, 8-3 and 5-4, before falling on Sunday. Kind of got away from the pitching staff there with a big first inning. They ended up losing that game 14-8 to close things out. Coulter McAnally was Coulter McAnally, stable, consistent, kind of a throwback front of the rotation guy. Looked great, I thought. And, this is just another guy, Noah, that you were on all off season. You had him, yeah, but you had him above some of the other arms in the league in what is a really talented starting pitching league. And I mean, he backed you up with his play on Friday, which is pretty cool to see.
Yeah, it feels like Utah is at their best on Fridays, certainly because of him, but also the most fun to watch, and also it's kind of going to be a trendy pick if you're into the the sharps of Vegas of the world. Maybe you say, you know what, actually, there's some value on Utah and Friday in that world, but then also it's must watch when he's on the mound because he really is a tremendous talent, and ERA of 0 through a game of his, and that's all you can dream of for a pitcher. Peyton Risky is somebody I like as well. I kind of liked his numbers when I looked into him, and he pitched pretty well. And then it went off the rails a little bit with Anson McGorman, it would appear, with his 94 ERA, not hyperbole. But I like Utah as a prospect. I don't know what their offense is going to look like this season. I don't know if anybody really stole the show.
Kim Gurney was one that stood out.
Yeah.
Kim Gurney got on base quite often, drove in a couple runs. Zaki Hawkins was another one that had a couple really good ABs. Consistency will be.
Yeah, Nevin Noonan was a guy I was excited for. So he didn't really contribute much, it would appear. But if you're going to tap into that potential, there's excitement in kind of the middle of the order there. But Friday night's Utah, Coulter McNally, worth the price of admission. And I'm glad to see it pay off so far. I will gladly take credit for his career, but he's had 2 really good years until this point. So he's earned it.
Well, I'm just assuming that you hyped him up for the last few years. You've been in constant communication, really kind of guiding him along the way. And so now this is just kind of the public announcement of Coulter McAnally is here and Noah is the reason why.
Yeah. We're getting lunch early next week just to go over some things. And we have some big things planned. That's all I'll say.
Perfect. But I mean, in all seriousness, though, 2-1 is kind of the recipe for success for Utah this year, right? Like if you can get a consistently ace-like performance from Coulter on Fridays and then figure it out on Saturdays. Dylan Fine and Seth Graham were really good in relief on Saturday, which I think will be important moving forward. That's the recipe, though. That's the recipe to having a better record, having a little bit more success in league, and maybe working your way past BYU and one other team to get into the Big 12 tournament this year.
Yeah, it would appear to be, and they have a freshman. I struggle to pronounce his name. It's like Linus or Linnaeus or something along those lines, who hasn't gotten any run yet on the mound. If he can live up to that billing, maybe he slides in on Sundays, and in that case, Utah becomes a lot more juicy of a potential, maybe not an NCAA tournament bid stealer, but maybe they're going to mess up some other team seasons.
Yeah, I agree with you there. All right, let's talk about the 2 0-3 ball clubs on the weekend. One maybe a little bit more expected than the other just because of what's going on with both of those teams. We'll start with Texas Tech. They have an 0-3 weekend in Arlington. They lose to Oklahoma on Friday, 10-3. They lose by run rule to Vanderbilt in 8 innings, 13-3 on Saturday. And then almost out of nowhere, but a commendable performance against Arkansas. Connor Mohan gave them, I thought, their best start of the weekend. 4-run 9th inning to briefly take a 5-4 lead before Arkansas ends up winning that game in 11 innings. If these 3 games happen in reverse, I think the conversation about Texas Tech is very different. But the fact that they showed so much fight on Sunday afternoon was nice to see, frankly. And then Tim Tadlock gave them credit for the fight that they showed in the 9th inning, because realistically, like, the offense had done nothing for the most part. that day until that ninth inning. Tracer Lopez gives the big single to drive in a couple runs. But if on a scale of 1 to 10, and understanding that we're doing this in the context of what our expectations were coming into the year, how worried are you about an 0-3 start for Texas Tech?
I struggled with it because you mentioned the expectations. What was the best case scenario this weekend for Texas Tech? And I think that was maybe even realistic to say 2-1 was the best case scenario for the Red Raiders. So, in comparison, if you're going to tell me they almost went 1-2, I'm not. There's a reason to be excited if you're a Texas Tech fan. At least offensively, I really like Kyler. Name's escaping
Thompson.
me. Kyler Thompson felt like he was doing everything this weekend. Lincoln Garcia looks like a really fun freshman. Robin Villanueva still has a big bat. So it wasn't like a total shutdown. He didn't. I think it was Washington got shut out 3 times this weekend.
Yeah.
There's certainly worse case scenarios than what Texas Tech saw. So I think I'm going to come in at 6 out of 10, just because we were already concerned heading into the year. But relative to what was Texas Tech's best year, I don't think we've lost track of that just yet.
Yeah. I also really liked what I saw from Matt Keaton. He didn't get many hits, but he hit the ball hard a couple of times. I thought, I talked to Tadlock about him specifically after their loss Saturday, just asked, what he had seen from the JUCO transfer of the first few days. He said he liked the way he was managing the pitching staff, said he thought that the pitchers could have helped him out more with some of the stolen bases against Vandy. Vandy's just excellent, though, as a base stealing ball club. Oklahoma, too. They executed everything flawlessly all weekend. But Tadlock told me this Keaton is a guy that they want to get to the point where he is calling the pitches for the pitching staff. So they have a lot of confidence in his ability. They liked the pop in the bat, even though the ball wasn't falling for him. So they've got some good pieces. And like you mentioned with the freshman, we saw him at shortstop. We saw him at third base. He didn't seem overwhelmed by either position. Didn't seem overwhelmed. Similar to Lucas Franco, did not seem overwhelmed by the fact that he was playing against 3 SEC teams in a major league ballpark right out of the gate for his college career. Handled the moment really well. And so if Lincoln Garcia can kind of come into his own along with some of these transfer pieces and Kyler Thompson, I think they'll be just fine. I mean, just fine for what our expectations were for Texas Tech, right? Like middle of the league, maybe at best, but probably somewhere around that 9th or 10th seed heading into Big 12 tournament play.
Overall, I don't disagree.
All right, Arizona, a much different 0-3. Obviously, they had the heartbreaking news last week of losing Tony Pluta to a UCL injury. There are just some injuries that you can't overcome, right? Like losing a Friday starter, like TCU did a couple years ago in Ben Abelt. You're just not going to be able to overcome that when it happens in January. And with Tony Pluta, not only was he your closer, but he was a guy that could come in the 7th inning, get you a three inning save. He could give you multiple multi-inning outings in a weekend, right? This is a guy that, he could give you 40 to 45 innings out of the bullpen as your closer and really never see a drop off with that amount of usage. And now you have to find a way to make up all of those innings. And they ran into it almost right out of the gate, right? In that Saturday loss to Oregon State, when you have a lead in the 7th inning, I don't know if they would have gone to him in the 7th on the first weekend of the season, but the comfort blanket, the safety blanket of Tony Pluta is not there anymore. And I think that really impacted Arizona on the weekend.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, especially when you're playing such high quality competition. And it was when you played Oregon State, it might as well have been a home game for Oregon State, even though you're in your home state of Arizona. We kind of said the narrative around this team was the dynamite pitching, at least on Friday and Saturday, with Owen Kremkowski and Smith Bailey. Their importance of going longer, maybe not even longer into games, but just keeping things at bay while an offense developed, at least in terms of into their new roles, because a lot of these guys are transfers and other guys looking for their first opportunity, even though they've been at Arizona. And it felt very experimental in the way that they were doing things a little bit. I know that when you replace Tony Pluta, you have to get experimental as well. And you saw a couple relievers pitch a couple times, and Patrick Morris and Evan Brandt, who probably weren't going to get 2 outings maybe before Tony Pluto went down, and then offensively, nobody did anything too tremendous. At least not guys we've heard of. Andrew Kane was the prize jewel coming back to that lineup, and he did fine, 4 hits on the weekend. But then Mathis Moran and Tony Lira led the way, and then Bo Sylvester, I know, had a big hit to give Arizona a lead, I think, against Oregon State, and then they ended up faltering in that game. That's how they're winless, as it turns out. Um, but it's just a lot of plug and play offensively, and when you lose Pluta, you all of a sudden feel like you're scrambling on both sides of the coin. And it felt like that you didn't hope that you would face the consequence of like 3 different pitching coaches in the course of 8 months, but when you lose the stalwart in the end of the bullpen, all of a sudden it's a lot of pressure on a pitching coach who may not know the middle names of everybody on the roster. I think you're muted again.
That's an aspect that is undercovered, I think, when it comes to the Pluta injury, is the turnover at that pitching coach spot. It's, if I'm Chip Hale, I'm just ripping that phone out of the wall altogether and making sure that my current pitching coach stays for at least 5 or 6 years, because the turnover just in the span of the last 6 months has been a little ridiculous. I feel for him, and it's certainly impacting how things started this weekend. All that to say, though, Colin McKinney, I thought, had a good outing against Michigan. He struck out 8 in 4 2/3. I thought that was the best pitched game of the weekend for Arizona State, or for Arizona, pardon me. Please don't kill me, Arizona fans. Don't slash my tires. Like you did to Texas Tech basketball. But all in all, we did talk a lot off in the preseason about the pitching really needing to carry the load until the lineup got going. And now it's, I think, even more critical for the lineup to get going quickly, because once you get past your starter, you don't really know the direction things are going to go. And my biggest question mark for this team was, how were they going to bridge from the starters to Tony Pluta? And now you have to bridge from the starters to the end of the game. And I just don't know. I just don't know how that's going to work out. On a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you after this 0-3 start for Arizona?
I'm similar with Texas Tech on the scale, just because of you had higher expectations for Arizona because of the players they still have. Pluto was part of that, but Kremkowski, Smith Bailey still exist. They're still healthy. Thank God for Arizona. And you still have faith in the offensive developing. These were quality opponents that they faced in Power 5 teams. So there's a lot of excuses that you can make for Arizona. And the real silver lining is this is exactly how they started last season. Of course, with much higher talent, but they went winless to start the year in Arlington, and they ended their season in Omaha. Now, does a weekend like this also hurt your ability to be a regional host if you do exactly what you did last year? Because we know it did last year. Maybe. You don't want to put too much stock into a 3-game weekend, but at the same time, you have to scramble on multiple fronts right now. And it's not necessarily going to be smooth going forward, because we know we can look at hindsight and say, look at all the talent you had last year. Maybe that's waiting in the wings, but more than likely it's not going to click like it did last year.
Yeah, more than likely it won't. I mean, it's just, I know that Tony Pluto was just one piece of the puzzle, but it's like, if you're looking at, he was like the John Hancock signature puzzle piece, though. Like, he was such a big part of it that I don't know long term how they overcome that over the course of a season. I wrote about it over at Base 12. I think they have to I think they have to go more of a committee operation. I know that they named a replacement closer, but just asking any one player to try and replicate all of that production, I think is almost a little bit of a folly. I think they've got to do more by committee if they want to have the success they want to have this year. I'm trying to type in Big 12 baseball schedule. This is how messed up search is these days. I type in Big 12 baseball schedule 2026, and the first thing that pops up is TCU's baseball schedule. The next thing that pops up is a Flow Sports TCU baseball schedule. The next thing that pops up is Baylor's schedule, and then a Big 12 baseball conference schedule announced article from October 15th. So, shout out to Google. You're in great shape. Nothing's wrong with search. or the internet in general, everything's fine. Nobody ask any questions. I am going to the baseball schedule now as I just narrate on the my internet usage. This is great radio. But let's take a look at some of the matchups to kind of wrap up the show, Noah. Some really fun midweek games across the league, leading into a pretty exciting weekend slate. Let's start with the midweek. Cincinnati against Auburn,
Yeah.
UCF against Miami, kind of the two headliners there, and then Texas Tech at UTRGV. But Cincy going to Auburn, UCF, I believe, going to Miami.
Yeah.
Some really fun Tuesday night matchups on deck.
Yeah, I think that the Auburn one in particular is just stood out to me because I know how tough Auburn's schedule is. So the upside of that is if you beat Auburn, you now kind of quasi inherit every win that they pick up along the way because it makes you look that much better through all the stats that help you that nobody really understands, RPI and whatever the committee wants to make up. But if when they boost Auburn, you get a little bit of a sprinkle on top because you beat Auburn potentially. It's just a midweek. SEC midweeks don't matter, but fortunately, Big 12 midweeks kind of do. So that's a little bit of sarcasm regarding how the SEC is evaluated, but I'm really intrigued by that one. And then UCF and Miami as well is just a fun one. In-state is always fun. We saw UCF play really well. We actually didn't even talk about UCF. That
Oh my
must be how you
gosh,
feel.
we didn't.
But they went, I believe, 3-0 this week.
That's
And
the team that I. This is what I get for going not in
Yeah.
alphabetical order.
But they have a lot of fun talent, and that'll feel almost a little bit personal, I think, for a lot of the in-state talent in that one. And Miami's pretty good in their own right, so that should be a good watch.
Yeah, UCF. This is why I kind of glazed over them. They beat Siena in 3 games. They run rule them in all 3 games. They combined score of 3 games was 44-1. So yeah, I mean, you beat the brakes off Siena in weekend 1. Fun fact though, freshman Jordan Lodice, a familiar last name I think to college baseball fans, had a home run, his first career home run on Saturday. Zach Skinner was great. Landon Moran had a grand slam in game 1. Yeah, I mean they swung the bat incredibly well against an overmatched Siena team, and now they get an in-state test, a game that they won last year. This, when we were talking about them preseason, their wins over Miami and Florida last year, I think, were part of the reason we kind of looked back at their record and said, I thought they were much better than that, because they did make some hay in the midweek against in-state opponents that really stood out. So another opportunity to do the same thing for a UCF squad that will really kind of be getting its first test of the year. Rounding out that midweek schedule, Baylor hosts Texas State. TCU is back at Globe Life against UT Arlington. A very Tice Armstrong-less UT Arlington, thankfully. Arizona hosts Nebraska Omaha, and then Arizona State with a fun midweek matchup against UConn. TCU transfer Cole Klecker will be getting the start for Arizona State in that game. Willie Bloomquist talked about him being the midweek guy early, and then maybe moving into the weekend rotation once Big 12 play begins. We'll see how his midweek starts go, because that'll obviously go a long way to that evaluation. Kansas heads to Beaumont randomly to play Lamar on Wednesday. Very fun. Former Fort Worth Regional participant Lamar, the Cardinals. Fun fact: my wife got her master's degree from Lamar. Very fun university. And then we get into the weekend on Thursday. It's another long weekend of college baseball. Is there anything weekend series wise that you're really looking forward to this in weekend 2?
And I'm gonna have to pull it up myself here.
I mean, I know you're gonna be all right. So you're gonna be in LA for TCU UCLA, a top 10 matchup, unless you're going by the perfect game rankings, and it's a top 11 matchup. It's gonna be fantastic baseball. Rock Chalowski and Sawyer Stroh-Snyder on the same baseball field. It's going to be awesome television. Except only the first game will be on TV. It'll be on FS1, and then you got to have the Big 10 Plus subscription on Saturday and Sunday to check out those baseball games. So it looks like I'm paying $13 to watch the team I cover play baseball for 2 days. But that's going to be the kind of the headliner series. But what else are you looking forward to watching this weekend?
Well, just scrolling through here, it feels like the Big 12 plays UConn. Every single team in the league gets a chance to play UConn. Arizona gets a crack at them at home. I always say Nebraska just played UConn, and I consequently know a lot of Nebraska fans just living in the state, unfortunately. And I said, get UConn. This is now is the time you want to play UConn because they're going to win 15 games in a row in March or April as soon as they thaw out. Right now they're ice cold. They're playing outside for the first time. That's a win that always ages really, really well if you beat them early. And I'm excited that the Big 12 gets so many cracks at them because I actually love UConn as a baseball program, and I hope that they win a College World Series someday. I really like their story. But that's for another day. Uh, UCF is in the Jacksonville Classic. That's always a fun event that comes down to a weird tiebreaker. They play Notre Dame, and I forget LSU's in the mix there. That's a challenge.
Indiana
And
as
then
well.
Yep, there you go. And then Baylor is in Round Rock against, like we alluded to earlier, Oregon, Southern Miss, Purdue. Those aren't, or not Oregon, Oregon State. Two of those are not programs that pop off the page, but Southern Miss is a tremendous program that just picked up 2 or 3 out of UCSB. Oregon State is an Omaha caliber team because they played in Omaha last year and they got even better. And then Purdue is a program that's always had a lot of talent in the locker room that maybe doesn't stay around in the portal, but there's a reason to be excited about each of the teams in Round Rock. And then Kansas continues their tour of the Southland with McNeese State, another challenge that will probably have a good crowd behind them. K-State is down in Arlington against, off the top of my head, Auburn, Nebraska. I forget who else is there. Michigan is down there.
Yes.
And Michigan is a really strong ball club according to their record. We'll see how susceptible that is. I think we might learn a lot about K-State this weekend. So those are just the ones, as I quickly scroll, that stood out to me. But again, if you want to watch good baseball, you'll watch Coulter McNally on Friday or Thursday. I assume Friday, depending on when that series starts.
They are in the they're in a little bit of a tournament as well.
Okay.
They start Thursday. They play UC San Diego on Thursday, San Diego on Friday, San Diego State on Saturday, and then to round it out, Creighton on Sunday.
Oh, okay.
The obvious fourth team
Yes.
in that quartet.
I didn't realize
They
I
will.
lived in San Diego.
That's
That's
pretty
exciting.
nice, right? Yeah, the weather's great, isn't it? So a fun little quad of games for the Utes there as well. Arizona, like you mentioned, plays UConn, and then Houston has the treat of hosting UTRGV for a weekend series. So I'll be interested to see how the Cougars handle that squad. And this time of year too, it's really nice to see some of these common opponents for teams because you can start to measure how they fared. Will Houston outperform Kansas against UTRGV? I would be pretty surprised by that. Um, but hey, we're here talking to our children about 4-0 Houston
Yeah.
Cougars right now. So what do I really know in the grand scheme of things? And then, 2 more Monday games. BYU plays UC Riverside, and then TCU finishes their trip to LA with a game against Loyola Marymount. Very fun fact, that is who Chase Brunson was committed to before he ended up flipping his commit to TCU. So I'm sure Loyola Marymount's team has that on their mind
Yep, it's
ahead of
bulletin
that
board
matchup.
material.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Going to be a good weekend, though, of
Yeah.
Big 12 baseball. A lot of really fun matchups, and we're going to know a lot more about the teams in this league coming away from week 2. Uh, I think we'll be pleasantly surprised by some of these results.
I hope so because like we alluded to, a little bit of a roller coaster watching it from not afar because we saw 3 of them up close, but kind of just score watching for a little bit there, going oh, and then hey,
Yeah.
they won. It just felt like that for opening weekend, and that's usually how it goes, at least early on, until especially on Sundays, until some guys settle in.
Yes, and so hopefully we'll start to see some guys settle in. I'm sure we'll see new defensive alignments. We'll see a bunch of new everything this weekend. It'll be
Yeah.
really fun to learn from all of that. Let me look here. I think that's going to do it for this episode. Noah, any last thoughts, final words before we close out the show?
It's just good to be back to the whirlwind of getting on a plane, flying, and going and watching baseball, and then also Big 12 baseball, and then coming home and thinking, okay, how do I get back to being a human being? Because you sit and just kind of, for lack of a better word, overdose on baseball, especially when you go from the last time we watched college baseball, it was 2 teams, but then it was 8 teams, and even it was 64 teams for a month, so it was very confined. You could watch the sport very easily, and then all of a sudden, well, it's 300 teams again, and some of them play at this time, and they're in Puerto Rico, so they're actually playing at this weird time that's actually not this time that we said. So it's nice to be back in it all, but at the same time, it's still overwhelming, and I'm looking forward to it still continuing to settle in, and midweeks feel like a good point for things to settle in, where we get on a routine, and I'm looking forward to tomorrow when we get to dive into more midweek baseball.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. That's going to end this episode of the Flyover League at the 1 hour, 20 minute, 48-second mark. Great job tonight. And that's going to do it. Yep.
All
We're
right.
the great dismount. Let's get out of here. Go follow Noah's work over at College Baseball Central. You can find some of my stuff over at Base 12. That Substack is free for everybody. And we will talk to you next time.